All right, guys. So the leadership of Black Lives Matter, our favorite communist organization that promotes communism for everybody else but capitalism for themselves, right? Is coming out in support of the Cuban communist government, just like China, right? Telling the United States that we need to lift our embargo and blaming what is happening right now. Blaming what's happening right now in terms of the Cuban protest uprisings on the United States. Again, this sounds very, very familiar, right? It's par for the course from those who don't like the United States, right? Blame the United States for literally everything, okay? It's always our fault. And more specifically, it's always Trump's fault, okay? That's just how it goes. And thankfully, they received massive backlash from releasing a statement that really is just a whole lot of spin, okay? There's a whole lot of mental gymnastics going on here to try to justify this statement from Black Lives Matter, when in reality, they just want to support a government that they feel like they want society to be like, which is basically like Cuba, right? They want us to embrace communism, okay? Their founders were trained Marxists, right? It all makes sense. So let's read here. Quote, Black Lives Matter condemns the U.S. federal government's inhumane treatment of Cubans and urges it to immediately lift the economic embargo. This cruel and inhumane policy, instituted with the explicit intention of destabilizing the country and undermining Cubans' right to choose their own government, is at the heart of Cuba's current crisis. Okay, so they're saying that we're undermining the Cubans' right to choose their own government. Last time I checked, the embargo was in place because we don't agree with their government, and a lot of Cubans, also the Cuban people, don't agree with the government as well, right? The government is under a communist dictatorship, right? So I don't understand how they're making this argument. We actually do want Cubans to choose their own government, and the government that they currently have right now is not a government that they chose, right? In fact, it's a government that they don't want anymore. That's why these protests are happening. That's why they're calling for freedom. But apparently Black Lives Matter doesn't see that. Since 1962, the United States has forced pain and suffering on the people of Cuba by cutting off food, medicine, and supplies, costing the tiny island nation an estimated $130 billion. So what they forgot to leave out here is that, yes, it is true that past sanctions and embargoes did cut off food and medical supplies, but Clinton, right, and I think like 1999 or the early or 2000, he actually lifted the part of the embargo that includes food and certain humanitarian aid. Okay, so we do allow that. We also have $6 billion in financial claims against the Cuban government, right? So they owe us some money, right? They owe us some money. And that's also part of the reason why the embargo is still in place, right? There's multiple reasons, but BLM leaves that out, that we've loosened these restrictions over time. Like, again, facts are stubborn things, man. Without that money, it is harder for Cuba to acquire medical equipment needed to develop its own COVID-19 vaccines and equipment for food production. This comes in spite of the country's strong medical care and history of lending doctors and nurses to disasters around the world. Here we go. This is them basically supporting the socialized medicine, right? This is the Bernie Sanders argument about how, well, despite the authoritarian regime and the human rights abuses, at least they have universal health care.
Way back in, 1961, they invaded Cuba. And everybody was totally convinced that Castro was the worst guy in the world, that all the Cuban people were going to rise up in rebellion against Fidel Castro. They forgot that he educated their kids, gave them health care, totally transformed the society.
Right. At least the government is paying for the health care. At least you have government-run health care. That's literally what this argument is here. Okay. Then they say the people of Cuba are being punished by the U.S. government because the country has maintained its commitment to sovereignty and self-determination. Again, I don't understand where they're getting this information from, because we're not punishing the Cuban people, right? When Cuban people come here to the United States, they're treated very well, right? They're treated very, very well. That's why most of them are pro-America. That's why they love America. Also, on top of that, we have called for their government to be less authoritarian and for the nation to be more democratic and for the Cuban people to actually be able to have self-determination. That's the whole point of why the embargo is there in the first place, because we don't agree with communism. And that's not a democracy. That's not self-determination. Cuba is free to trade with whoever they want to trade with. The U.S. isn't the only country in the world that they can trade with. Okay, there's plenty of countries they can trade with, right? Again, the left, I thought they loved cancel culture. I thought they loved canceling folks. Okay? They can do business with whoever they want across the world. It doesn't necessarily have to be the U.S. And it is clear that the communist government has mismanaged resources. Okay, they have not done what they need to do. Okay, if Cuba wants to trade with us, right, they want to do business with the United States, then they need to give up communism, right? If they really want self-determination for their citizens, then they need to embrace democracy and embrace capitalism. And then we'll lift the sanctions. It's really that simple. And also on top of that, I mean, you know, we can't really trust this communist government. I mean, they did allow Russia to put Soviet nuclear missiles in the country to give Russia/Cuba the ability to nuke us. Okay, that was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, they did this after we invaded them, the failed invasion of the Bay of Pigs. But I'm just saying, you allow nukes to be pointed at us. We can't trust you after that, bro. We just can't trust you. But see, the way BLM looks at it is, it's like, well, they chose communism. They like communism. They like living under these conditions where there's no private ownership or anything like that. They like that, right? Private ownership is self-determination, not state ownership. But see, again, BLM, this is a hell of a spin job from them. United States leaders have tried to crush this revolution for decades. Instead of international amnesty, respect, and goodwill, the U.S. government has only instigated suffering for the country's 11 million, of which 4 million are black and brown. No, I think what the point of the embargo is to basically say, hey, we don't do business with communists, and also on top of that, to motivate the Cuban people to stand up to their government. Cuba has historically demonstrated solidarity with oppressed peoples of African descent, from protecting black revolutionaries like Assata Shakur through granting her asylum to supporting black liberation struggles in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea, Bosnia, and South Africa. Okay, yeah, you forgot to mention all the black and brown bodies, all the black and brown people that are currently being oppressed, right, and the human rights abuses that are being committed against them by Cuba. Okay, and by the way, guys, the Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, he actually came out and took blame, right? He took some blame. Obviously, he blamed the U.S. embargo too, but he actually took some blame for this. But Black Lives Matter is not giving them any blame. They're just blaming the whole U.S. Even the president's like, well, you know, we actually kind of played a role in this, right? This is actually kind of our fault. It just shows you how ridiculous this statement is. Now we look to President Biden to end the embargo, something Obama called for in 2016. This embargo is a blatant human rights violation, and it must come to an end. Okay, so I believe the embargo has to be lifted by an act of Congress. I don't think the president can unilaterally do that. Or put it this way, I think that the president has the power to essentially make the embargo meaningless. But I think to officially lift it, I think that takes an act of Congress. But I could be wrong about that. I've read some conflicting information about it. But I think the president does have significant power. It's just, again, it should go through Congress if we want to actually lift the embargo on Cuba. So, of course, this statement got a lot of people upset, right? And in the comment section, rightfully so, right? As you can see here, one person says, this is a horrible misrepresentation of what's happening in Cuba, and I'm incredibly disappointed. This person says, y'all would do anything to blame the U.S. instead of looking at the real problem. Viva Cuba Libre. This person says, genuine question. Is this statement coming from any Cuban or Cuban American voices? My biggest takeaway from BLM as a white passing person of color was to be quiet and to amplify black and brown voices. Shouldn't the same be done here? That's actually a good point. Okay, BLM says, white people, y'all need to shut up, right? And amplify black and brown voices. Let black and brown people speak. Now, what's happening in Cuba, BLM, instead of taking a step back and letting the Cuban people speak up, they're trying to speak, right? They're trying to speak for these people. She says, boosting the oppressed voices as they speak their truth. I'm Cuban American and live in Miami, and what I'm hearing from Cuban friends and family runs completely opposite of this statement. The communist regime in Cuba is just as much to blame as the U.S.'s long history of meddling in Caribbean politics. Let's not glorify oppression and abuse just because we like certain socialist ideas. Excellent statement. Love it. Love it. This is inaccurate. Another person said, yeah, this ain't it. Shame on you, BLM. Sharing awareness on Cuba's fight for freedom is appreciated, but your message is all wrong. Bro, this ain't the U.S. fault. Are you serious? Yeah. A lot of people, including Cubans, are not happy with this. This is patently false information. Regardless of your agenda, perhaps the followers on here can research and simply find out that more than half of what you say isn't true or otherwise manipulated forms of truth. Yep. You're right. And they're saying this as the dictatorship basically cut off internet in Florida to the citizens. Okay? So they couldn't speak out about what's going on. But BLM comes out here and they defend it. Right? They defend it. And guys, this just goes to show, this goes to tell you, this is what this group supports. This is what this movement supports. Anybody that's on board with the Black Lives Matter agenda is essentially on board with the country becoming like Cuba. Right? That's what they want. That's what they want. And this is why they come out here and support stuff like this. This is why they come out here and distort the truth. They push their propaganda because ultimately this is the goal. Patrisse Cullors may have left, but it seems that the organization has not changed. The mission is still the same. And this is still a communist Marxist organization. In every step of the way, they're telling you that this is what they want. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.